Spoilers ahead for the Rings of Power episode 8 and the entire series. Welcome back to the script department. Today we are chatting Rings of Power episode 8, getting some reflections on the series as a whole, as well as looking ahead to some predictions of where we might be going next. I'm joined today by the whole fellowship. Hey guys, Brad, Caleb, John, as we are forging our final thoughts on Amazon's Middle Earth. But before we get into all of that, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to get more of our stuff. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and even TikTok now. How exciting is that? Or you can head over to thescriptdepartment.net for the latest from our global network of screenwriters. So, welcome, fellowship of the script department. We are here to wrap it all up today. There's loads to unpack, so let's get straight into it. Initial thoughts on the episode. Let's go.
Who's going first? It's confusing having four of us here all at the same time.
I know we've not done this way before, have we? There's lots.
So
there's lots.
I enjoyed it. I've as I've been talking to Marcus about, I've been re-educating myself or educating myself initially on Tolkien as we've been going. So I think I probably had a different finale than I would have had for Brad at the start of this show starting. So it was quite an unusual experience, but I really enjoyed it. There were two sides of my brain fighting, the writer and the Tolkien fledgling in me. So yeah, I had a lot of feelings about various parts of the show, but I'm sure we'll touch on those as we go.
I'm excited to hear a bit about your how you think it's different for you now, having done the research, because we've been, as you say, we've discussed this backwards and forwards a wee bit, and it makes me at the same time both furious that you felt the need to do it, but also so gleeful that you've gone and done this research. So I am split in two on this whole thing. So I'm excited to get into that. Caleb, what do you think?
Should I say it's the greatest piece of television ever written? I'll hold that back. No, it was decent. I enjoyed it. I think I'm middling in this whole show. There were a couple high points. There was some fun stuff within it, but I think this episode just didn't really, for me, do it as far as just giving us a good place to land for the next, to sit with while the season 2 is in production, and we have like 4 years until it comes out. So so I think that, like, just given everything, there were parts that I really liked, but overall it was iffy.
Okay, interesting. John, what's your vibe?
I loved this last episode, and I loved the episode before that. And I really enjoyed the first episode, as I said in the discussion with Brad last time. And then after that, it started to become a little slow moving for me. Or at least it wasn't I didn't feel like it was ticking the kind of the boxes that I was looking for as a fan of the Peter Jackson films. And I'm a fan of all the Peter Jackson films. I don't really distinguish it. Obviously there are some better than others, but I love them all, just with equal glee. And I was looking for that feeling, that kind of just, I don't know, there's like a fairy tale quality to those films that just is like nothing else. And I was just looking for a bit of that in this. I wasn't getting that for one or two episodes. Mm-hmm. And then these last two episodes, I felt I was getting it in just by the gallon. And it was, even tonight, even today, thinking about it, I really loved everything I saw. It was surprising. It didn't go down the kind of obvious roads I thought it would. As somebody who doesn't really have any investment in the Tolkien universe other than I like the movies, that's it. It gave it for me, and I cannot wait for what they do next. Yeah. I really can't.
I think that's a really good way of looking at it, because I found I think one of the things I found so interesting about this is that it's very much its own. It's found its own identity, I think, in this Middle Earth. It's created its own kind of style of Middle Earth. And with these last couple of episodes, I think that fairy tale quality you're talking about is, for me, familiarity. And this it feels as though, that final shot of this episode And for those of you, you're not gonna be sticking with us this far if you've not seen it. But for those of you, real proper spoilers, here we go. That final shot of this episode with Sauron looking over the plains of Mordor with Mount Doom erupting in the background, I had chills. I was like, okay, here we are. Right, this is good.
That's
here
the
now.
and it's the most Peter Jackson thing
It is.
I've seen since the Hobbit movies.
Yeah. It was really something, I think, and the forging of the rings and things like that. I felt like it was a really good place to leave this as well, this story to go, because what I think is really interesting about this is that, and I think kind of picking up on what you're saying there, Caleb, about feeling as though it's left in a weird place, is that this, I think they've hedged their bets a bit here. Because I think they knew this was going to be divisive, and they knew that there was going to be controversy, and they knew they were spending a lot of money. So I think what they've done here is they've left the story in a place where you could leave this story here, and you could never have another episode of The Rings of Power, and this would be pretty satisfying. Like, there are some story threads left hanging, but all of which are in some way or another linked into what you get there when you jump into The Hobbit, The Fellowship, things like that. You could leave it here, and I think that's kind of what they've done. So maybe and I kind of get that, what you're saying there, Caleb, because I kind of wish they'd committed a bit more to going for it and going, no, we are pushing forward with this, another series of this, but at the same time, I felt satisfied. So it's a big kind of mix there.
Yeah. I think there's there's as we've discussed on various shows about the curse of the prequel, that we know at times there are no surprises. Like, we know some of these characters, not because they're elves, are immortal, but the characters are immortal to us because we know they're not going to die in any of these scenes, because they're going to survive for hundreds, if not thousands of years, however they decide to mess with the timeline. And to leave it on, there weren't really any cliffhangers. They've been quite good with a few of the cliffhangers, but it was just like, Middle Earth goes on kind of thing. We know almost everything we need to know now. There is very little that we've been left with that we're dying to find out. We just know that it's going to carry on. So that's that was quite an interesting way to leave it, considering how many cliffhangers they've had in the series so far.
But I loved how. Am I right, Marcus, in saying that the song at the end, the lyrics are excerpts from Cate Blanchett's opening monologue of Fellowship of the Ring? Am I right?
That's correct. Yeah, which is itself.
Is it verbatim? Is it verbatim?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, because that monologue is verbatim from the text. That is the original. That's written. It is written, as it were. So that, I think, is they've taken it from that thing, which it again helps that thing. If they left this here, they're literally starting it with the monologue.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It dovetails.
It's like you get this. I always love that in television because my biggest fear is that, like, I'll fall in love with a show, it'll get cancelled after one season, and I'll be left with it. Like Mindhunter, I loved Mindhunter, and for it to not get picked up after 2 seasons, I thought there's this whole case we're never going to get the solution to, But I love how almost every season of Westworld, for example, always ends in a way where you kind of feel like that could be it now. We're done, And I did feel that this season ended with this beautiful, just, it's almost like you could, and I imagine someone on YouTube will do a cut where it segues into the opening monologue of Fellowship of the Ring, and you will just have this wonderful connection where we've met Sauron. He's gifted us the rings, some rings anyway, through his manipulation and so on. And now this is where it would jump cut to, like, the devastation years later,
And
I think it's really wonderful. Yeah.
And it's really nicely. So what they do to get into the characters then, of this whole thing has been obviously kind of largely from Galadriel's point of view. She's very much the kind of the main protagonist of this. And I think it's really interesting, again, to look ahead to the future. You have this interaction with who we discover is Sauron, and this whole business of that those lines of dialogue that they're playing with each other there. He's saying, oh, you could be the queen, you could be this, you could, it's the join me and we shall rule Middle Earth conversation, isn't it? Like, and the
we won't rule.
yeah. Subjugate. So it's all of that, but it takes that moment from the Fellowship of the Ring where she considers taking the ring from Frodo and it recontextualizes it, and that's what good prequels do, right? It takes what we've already seen and gives new context to those moments, and by playing with those words in that way, reordering them, it gives extra weight to what we see in the future, but also retroactively gives us extra weight for now because we know what temptation is coming later. I thought that was brilliant. Yeah, I was so into
I'm in agreement with that one. I love how they can retextualize if we don't even think about the text here, if we think about the Jackson films, if they're recontextualizing information by giving us the same information in a slightly different way. So the line that she says, I can't remember exactly, Queen as strong as the core of the earth, and he says that he gave her that line. So it's kind of like, right, there are things happening here, and the fact that the Gandalf not Gandalf guy, they're pulling lines out of when they were in, was it when they were in Moria? He's saying follow your nose, and it's like, it's just right. That for me works here because they are pulling at threads of things that we already know, which you've got to do, otherwise it's just really disjointed. But I think the writing around those pieces was really quite smart for me. I quite like that.
Do you want to know my notes, right? As I was watching this, I always have a little notepad open next to me and I'm going through it. And my notes are, he's not Sauron though, is he? About the old guy that meeting the stranger. Yeah. He's not Sauron though. Early on I wrote that down. He was like, and he's like, oh, he's probably a wizard of some kind. Oh, he's a wizard. Oh, Astari. Yeah, that's the thing. I recognize that. He's not Gandalf though. And then it kind of went down. It's like, no, maybe Radagast or something, it's the thing. And then he says at the end of it, follow your nose. And I'm like, oh, it's fucking Gandalf. Okay, fine, it's Gandalf. All right, whatever. Because I've just been in denial this whole time about that. Because for some reason, I didn't want it to be Gandalf. Maybe I just didn't want to see anyone else do that. But then
to me that was so it was telegraphed basically by who the characters are. Now I don't want to say I saw it coming a mile away because I didn't. That's what I love about the show is I really didn't see things coming a mile away. But I did feel like you've got the Harfoots who are clearly the precursor to the Hobbits. You've got this guy who has been saved by them, who's been educated by them in a way, who is clearly going to learn the power that these seemingly inferior people compared to the elves or the and so on, the might of the dwarfs and so on and so forth can actually bring. I mean, these are the people who were able to sneak up on the evil elves or whatever they were, the three. And they're the ones who survive, who always survive and all that. And I just thought, of course, that's why Gandalf would have such love for hobbits and such trust for them. Also, he has this seemingly kind of long-term friendship with Galadriel in the Hobbits, in the Hobbit films, and then obviously in the other films. And it just seemed like if you've got Galadriel, you've got to have the people that Galadriel is close with as well. And it just, so that that beat doesn't feel like it's being shoehorned in. It doesn't feel like it's fan service. It feels natural to the world that Tolkien and so on built. And I do say Peter Jackson as well, because this is New Line. So they're very clearly, it is easy to forget that New Line are involved in this because you only see their name at the end of the credits. But I think they are clearly trying to steer this into Peter Jackson's neck of the woods as well. So it just it felt natural to me that he was Gandalf.
Yeah.
Do you think that the throwing his character in the mix of is he Sauron, and then especially the opening of this episode, do you think that cheapens it at all from a writing standpoint?
I thought it was cheap that they sorry, Marcus. I thought it was cheap that they went for the "you're Sauron" at the beginning and then flip flopped at the end.
Because I really like that the note of him being his relation to the hobbits, but
yeah, it did feel like you were trying to have one more kind of a Spielberg always said his whole head floating out of the boat in Jaws was just his one more attempt to scare the hell out of the audience, just squeeze that one more thing out, and that works. I got angry when they said Lord Sauron, because I was like, either this is the worst writing ever, like, and you have no respect for your audience's ability to predict these things, or you are doing a cheap double take. And I think it is a cheap double take, but I forgive it in the context of everything.
I felt it was obvious.
Interestingly.
So, sorry, Marcus. I was going to say I felt it was obvious. I felt it, but as soon as it was, they said you're Sauron, I was like, no, it's not. Come on, they've got that wrong.
Yeah. I had exactly the same.
Whenever
thing.
we were watching it, I was watching it with my wife, and I turned to her and was like, I was like, okay, who's your final bet on who Sauron is? And then it's like, Lord Sauron, like right as I say that, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's
fine.
Sweet. I didn't think that was gonna happen.
But I think it's pretty natural, though, that from a structural point of view, that they would do that, because this whole series has been who's Sauron. It's been, Scooby-Doo trying to figure out who Sauron is, in a lot of ways, like following those clues. And so I think it's kind of natural. It is cheap. I don't disagree. It is a bit cheap, but I think it's natural that they would do this, though. They'd reflect the structure of the overarching episode series in this finale. Go on, John.
What did you guys think about the way in which Galadriel discovers, or the way they did reveal that Halbrand was Sauron? Because I really only started to think that Halbrand was Sauron after the end of the last episode. And it was just really my own gut. I was like, it cannot be the stranger. It just can't be him. It's too obvious. So it's got to be somebody else. Could it be Halbrand? And then when I talked with you, Brad, I was like, okay, actually, Brad.
Oh yeah, my chips have been on my boy Halbrand for quite a while now.
Your boy Halbrand, yeah.
Ever since he was like, "Do you know me?"
yeah. But I felt like the way they were revealing it in this episode, it was almost like Galadriel was catching up to the audience. It didn't feel like they were like when they pulled out the family tree of the Southlands or whatever. I was expecting like some clues on the table and like some big revelations, but there was more emphasis put on her discovering what Sauron's symbol, the trident meant, and it's actually a map of the Southlands or something like that. To me, it felt like that was more revelatory than the family tree, which we never got to see. Like the line is broken and has been broken for 1,000 years, and it's like we don't even get to learn that moment with her. And it did feel like it's just they knew, and maybe that's a testament to how they're thinking about the audience, but it seemed like they knew the audience had already caught up to that. But the problem is, I don't think there was enough emphasis in the other episodes to really expect that the audience would all catch up. Like the fact that, Caleb, you're having bets about who he is, says that there's no certainty in the audience. So I don't know. I guess my question is, do you think they handled the reveal as in the most impactful way, I guess, or did it feel a bit like
I don't think so.
We're just catching up to the audience now?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that, to be honest with you, the plot line of the elves in this one and the whole business of Mithril saving the elves from whatever, I'm kind of rolling my eyes at a little bit, because I don't feel as though I connect with it, and it feels MacGuffin-y. It feels like we need a reason for these rings to be made. We need a reason for this to happen, and here's a good one. And I don't click with it, and in that sense, I feel as though Halbrand kind of working with Celebrimbor in this episode, and then being sort of revealed to be this Sauron, it feels as though there have been suggestions of it, I think we should have spent longer with them working together. They should have got there like at the beginning of the last episode or something like that, and he's in full strength and he begins working with him, and we see that relationship develop. So it then is undercut by the fact that this thing, also the whole business of that line was broken 1,000 years ago. What, you mean like the return of the king? Like this thing where they're like the king has returned, and all this emphasis is put on that, and nobody seems to worry about the fact that the line was broken 1,000 years ago, because it's like, well, look, it's the heir of Isildur, even though he's got like no genetic whatever. But anyway, that like no one worries about that in the last film of this whole world, and she's using that to be, this moment of like, well, you can't possibly be who you say you are because the line was broken 1,000 years ago. It's like, I don't know.
I think there was some interesting decisions they made structurally and executionally of of her beginning to understand, because they'd set it all up throughout. It was one of these things where it's like, oh, she's, they've stitched in all these little clues about what he said and what people have said and when they were said, but they didn't. There's a visual device that's usually used for this that can be cheesy as hell, which is maybe they didn't do it, where the line is said again, and there is at least a visual or an audio flashback or something to remind you of where she heard that line in the first place. And I don't think they did it now and again, but they didn't do it as directly as they could have done. And I think that some of her understanding or some of her discovery was lost in that, because it's what, 9, how many episodes are we now? 8 hours, 9 hours?
8, yeah.
So 8.5 hours long, let's call it. So it's just...
Go for it, yeah.
It's just... There's a lot to remember. So the line where Celebrimbor can't remember where he heard... he's obviously been influenced by Sauron / Halbrand. And he couldn't remember it, but it was Adar that said it, wasn't it? And when Adar said it, there was a flashback to her discovery of the orc in the wall. So that they did it there, but when it came to Celebrimbor saying it, it wasn't. She was just like, "I've heard that before." There wasn't really a. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't. They didn't use that device again, and it felt like, I don't know. We needed to be pulled through it a bit more. Yeah.
That's what I mean. It did feel that they knew. It's almost like they knew at that point, or so. It's. I know this stuff is made months and months ago, or even the final cut was probably approved months and months ago. But it almost feels like Book of Boba Fett felt like it was doing that as well, where it almost had this kind of live quality, where it's like, yeah, they're not going for this, are they? Throw in some Mandalorian, and it's like, and it did feel like, yeah, everybody's already figured this out. Let's just move past it. We can skip. It felt like a live event, and they were just cutting stuff out to keep up with the audience. That's and yeah. I don't hate it. I don't have it, but it was it was something I was reflecting on actually afterwards, and just wonder what you guys thought. Can I just ask one more question? Sorry,
Please
Marcus,
do.
and I'll hand control of this back to you. Do you think that Sauron, was your reading of this, that Sauron had all of this planned, or was it that he was adapting as he was going? Like, wait a minute, you're building something here. Wow, okay. Have you thought about this? Like, and he's adapting as things go on. Like, do you think the plan was blow up the mountain? Do you think the plan was get me to Celebrimbor? Like, or are these moments where he's like, I can make use. This could work in my favor. Wow, because I guess part of this, I feel like this is more interesting. This is Michaela's hot take on this, but like it felt more interesting that it's Galadriel's fault for giving him access to stuff. Whereas if this was his master plan, anybody would have, like, it almost like absolves her, because he would have got his way either way. But it's almost like she inadvertently fed the beast, and now it's gotten a taste for blood, I don't... What do you got? How did you read into it? Like,
I don't know that we have enough information to know one way or the other at this point, because it seems to me that he appears to be flying by the seat of his pants, but at the same time, which is kind of another thing where I don't know that this reveal was handled all that well, because you look back over the previous episodes of when he was just Halbrand and he was doing all this stuff, there's very little kind of there in terms of real evidence that he is this person, and it's almost as if they're not really playing fair with the audience. They're just kind of throwing it in at the last minute and going, oh, by the way, it's Sauron. And I don't know that, because he's playing his part so well that and is convincing everyone, perhaps including himself, that this is all not a plan, or it is completely not a plan. And I think if it's not a plan, it does somewhat undercut the great villainy that is Sauron, because if he's just wandering around and doing whatever happens, then why are we so bothered about him? He clearly doesn't have a plan. Like, Adar is responsible for the mountain and everything.
So there's a silver bullet to this. It was definitely all planned. They're floating in basically the Atlantic Ocean and happened to come upon one another. It was totally planned. The only thing that was missing in this episode was that thing, like in either Murder, She Wrote or Sherlock Holmes or whatever, where it shows you how the villain, did their illusion. Or like Now You See Me, or those films, him jumping off his speedboat in a wetsuit and then taking it off and hopping on the raft, that kind of thing. Like we should have had something like that showing us.
I disagree with that, because I think these are the rules of how this universe works. Like Star Wars is exactly the same. It's the idea that you can have the entire Skywalker family orbiting one planet at the same time, and but it's these kind of this thing that we would never accept in an Oscar-winning drama, Sundance Indie Darling or something like that. We're totally all about the fates have aligned, and the gods are laughing at us right now, and these people have bumped into each other. And I do think that I agreed with you the last time, because I thought, actually, wow, that really helps explain that he is Sauron. But I think now when I look at it, it doesn't seem like he had this. If he had said to me, you followed my plan beautifully, Galadriel, you would make a perfect wife, that kind of thing, I'd be like, okay, this was all a master plan. But to me, it didn't feel like it was a master plan. And so that means, to me, it doesn't feel like he was waiting for her.
So
it feels like they were just.
So why did he have
which is different,
the little coin pouch or whatever it is from the King of the Southlands on his person? Like it was a total setup. He was trying to get to those people to be there so that thing could happen, and it happened.
Would he have? Would he have known she was going to jump off the boat or something like that? How would that work?
Maybe he had an influence on
it.
Well,
and also like the way that they send her Galadriel off. And whenever they tell her that if she stays or something, she's gonna save the very thing she's trying to destroy. So like that makes me feel like it's not planned, because she does save Halbrand, and he says, "You saved me. You fought my enemies." All that stuff, and then even down to his performance for me feels like there's moments where he's like conflicted too, which there's someone posted a page from the first page from Rings of Power of the Silmarillion, and it talks about how Sauron is conflicted because of how he was taken in by Morgoth and like kind of brainwashed or something, I think.
So kind of the good
so
guy
all
Sauron
of that just kind of makes yeah. So it's kind of like to me, it's like more of like attempted, and like John was saying about how he's given access to these things, and it's just like, oh, well.
I think it makes Galadriel more, it will drive her crazy years from now, knowing like this wasn't, I think it's better if this wasn't his master plan. If he took advantage of opportunities that the arrogant Galadriel presented him with, because she's so sure in her ways, she's so certain in this and that and all that throughout, which I love, that he was just able to slip right under and just take advantage and pick their pockets, And whereas if it's a master plan and nothing you guys do is going to get in the way of me, then it absolves Galadriel. And I'm always thinking about, how do we get to the very sorrowful and very, I think, PTSD ridden, as you described, Marcus, version that we see in the movies. And it's like, well, yeah, I opened the gates.
Yeah, it's my fault.
I'm the one who trusted him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's something about that just strikes as more powerful. Sorry, Brad. I guess we're on different sides of this.
Either way, there's going to be a level of her being regretful, whether she was played or whether she pulled him out of the ocean, until we get the origin episode next season of how he got in the water. And why was just bobbing around with these guys on a bit of wood? Like, it's Sauron. Like, what was he doing there? So, like, until we get that origin episode, I think I'll stay on my soapbox of non-coincidental marooning at sea.
You're always allowed one coincidence, and that's it. And I think they got their coincidence. So I'm happy.
There are a lot of questions that before we can be in any way sure, because he spends a huge amount of time in Numenor. And he says to Galadriel in this episode, I wanted to stay in Numenor. So is he literally the Dark Lord Sauron? Are we saying that he was at one time considering retiring and becoming a smith? Is that what this was? He was going to retire from tyranny and just go and like make some swords in Numenor. Is this what we're going with? Because I just think if it's not a plan, I think it undercuts him, and I think it makes him less frightening and less kind of vicious as
I think
villain.
if you make it, I think if they leaned into his plan more, like these consider, like, hey, do you want to join? I really want to get to Middle Earth. Do you guys want to get to Middle Earth? Because I really want to get to Middle Earth. Like, if he's pushing any agenda in any way, I think it just becomes obvious, and I think they did a great job of burying it.
I think they buried it too deep, though.
Could just imagine him. I've got a real hankering for some lambus bread. Does anyone want to go to Middle Earth? Come on, everyone, let's go.
Just pop over.
You know what? It's getting
but
late.
It came at the cost.
Go.
I think that was the sacrifice, wasn't it? It came at the cost of they buried him. So they buried the hint or the hints that it meant that certain bits of credibility then get lost as well.
Because what I'm worried about now is sorry.
Oh, just on that page, like that first page of the Rings of Power, you should go and read that because it kind of gives some. It's very brief, obviously, but it does give that backstory that fits into this show, and kind of how they may have approached writing those parts, because it says like Sauron's on the way to answer and talk to someone for what he had done with Morgoth, I think. And so I feel like that's what they were getting at with him having been on the sea, and that's where he was going.
So maybe he would.
There were a lot of words that I didn't know in that. So this is a lot of names.
Does it say anything about his ability to sail or anything? Because maybe if he was like lost at sea or something, or
maybe that.
I'm just trying to win this argument.
A terrible sailor. Maybe that's what we're going to get. Maybe if the fallen Morgoth and Sauron is contritely goes back to the Valar to try and apologize for whatever, and they sent him off, and they go, no,
oh my god,
it was the Valar.
There's an insult, isn't there? Where someone doesn't like you, they say get in the sea. That's what they said. They must have just gone to go get in the sea, and he's like, oh, okay, and he had to go and float around the sea. Okay, maybe it was a coincidence.
But perhaps that's why. Maybe that's why they run into each other, though. So if because Galadriel was just about to go to the Undying Lands, and she's about to go home, right, to the Valar. And she runs into him, so maybe he's been thrown out of the same lighty wormholey thing from the Valar on his broken bit of wood. Maybe that's why they run into each other, because they were both kind of exiting this thing. I don't know. I think that might be stretching a bit. The whole business. What I'm worried about now is the next time I watch The Lord of the Rings and I see the Great Eye of Sauron, I'm quietly going to be thinking, in there's some guy just making some chainmail. Like, you know what? I love this. And I will dominate Middle Earth, but I just love my hobby. It's so good. I love making jewelry.
He was probably thinking about that when Isildur cut his hand off or something. It was probably he's probably like, God, this could have been a different life.
I did want to ask this question too. The cliffhanger, is Isildur actually dead? Like, what's going on there?
That's annoyed. You know what? That's annoyed the hell out of me.
That's my issue. That's my issue.
I'm so
There's no drama there.
There's no drama there. We know he survives. We know Elendil survives. There's no point in making any.
And they didn't come back to it, right? Like that's a cliffhanger. So like it's that type of stuff that's like kind of left where it's like it doesn't feel like it was important at all.
I think again they're thinking, you know what, audience will know, like there's no point. They know he's still alive. Let's just save time.
But then why not play it though? Like
there was a couple of things they left.
Like why not play that?
They left the Seeing Stone as well. Like she just went to pull it off and that was it. Like,
but I think what's happening is that the daughter, I think she saw her brother in the Seeing Stone, and that's what's going to make them in season 2. She's going to be like, he's still alive, and he's going to be like, shut up, like stop digging up old wounds, and she's going to be like, you have to go back to Middle Earth. Your son is alive. And that is going to be one of the things that will drive these characters in season 2. That's where I think it's going, because I thought you could have just shown me an amazing spectacle. You could have saved that idea if it's about the destruction of Numenor or something like that. You could have shown me that again, like you already showed me a clip of it early on in another episode. That could have been the moment here instead if you wanted. And I thought it was very telling that they didn't show either Isildur or what we saw in the Seeing Stone, and I think they're connected. I'm going to put out a call as well. Is Nori going to come back at the end of season 5 or whenever it is from her journey, and she's going to see the apple tree, and she's going to be like, "This is where I left them," and then you see that they've never actually left, and it's the Shire or something.
And
I thought that was going to be the Shire. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, because I was thinking, if they leave, how is she ever going to find them again? And wouldn't that be the most amazing thing for her friend to do? Is like, we've waited for you because we're like most people will say Marcus is checking now.
I'm looking. No, I'm looking at my map. I've got a little map on the wall. I'm trying to work it out because
because I'm like, what's the whole thing? It's like we don't leave people behind.
Yeah,
you kind of do, but you're saying you don't. And I thought, if her friend is to become the new kind of leader of this community, which it feels like that she's kind of being promoted into, or going to be at some point, I think her decision would be, we're going to wait for one of our tribe for one member of our tribe to catch up to us.
Yeah,
we're going to, and I think that's the Shire. Then
I think they're in the wrong place, I think, because the big and that's what. But I think
thanks.
Because the greenwood becomes Mirkwood, and that's what I was looking at.
That's a map of Westeros up there. Don't be silly. You look at the wrong one.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So talking,
Jeff, it's the wrong time. Sorry, we can't do it, Jeff.
Yeah, it's not going to work. It's not going to
work. He's probably there going, I want Smeagol. Can we have Smeagol?
Yeah. Can we have some Gollum in this? What's the deal? So talking of, I will talk about Gandalf for a minute in all this, and I'm just going to call him Gandalf. He's not confirmed that he's Gandalf, but he's Gandalf, isn't he? What I loved about that is that the writing and the performance, he started doing like a subtle impression of Ian McKellen at some point there, and it was like a young version of what Ian McKellen would do if he was playing Gandalf and he was that kind of age. And it was really abrupt, and suddenly it was like this guy's only able to say like fear, villain, bad apple, things like that, and suddenly it was like, you must follow your nose.
So poetic.
Yeah, exactly.
To be or not to be.
They changed his accent, didn't they? Because he had.
Well, now that I'm not Sauron.
Yeah.
To be honest, I didn't like the way the roles reversed, actually, because by the end of that episode, Nori was the one going, "Oh God, I'm a bit of my legs feel like cement right now," or something like that, and it's. She was the one who couldn't move or couldn't like say goodbye or anything like that, and I thought, no, actually it's supposed to be the other way around. You're the one that's supposed to be dragging him by the arm, going, come on, this way, and I do feel it kind of undermines a lot of the drama that could have been waiting for us in season 2, where she's the one that's kind of in charge of the mission to get him to Rune, whereas it feels like he's the one in charge of her safety now, and I thought, clearly those 3 evil elves, whatever they look like, are going to come back at some point. They're going to come back and pursue him or something. They're not gone, surely. I mean, I don't know if they are. It's a disappointment to see them gone.
They've got to come back. Her eyebrows are too fantastic to be. I'm obsessed with them. Like the angular. Wow, absolutely phenomenal. Like, I don't know what they are though. I'm kind of intrigued by that because I don't know that I haven't looked into it. I've finished watching this about 15 minutes before we started talking, so I can't work out what they're supposed to be. Like when they were disappearing, they looked a bit like wraiths. They looked a little bit like the ring wraiths that you saw when Frodo's wearing the ring. So maybe
don't say that.
What do you mean?
Some people got really mad when someone said that.
Oh really? Oh no, sorry everyone. I'm just saying design. I'm not saying it is that. I'm just saying the design was similar. What?
Don't do it, Marcus. Don't do it.
It's okay. Gonna be fine. Gonna hide under my desk. No, it's
because the Nazgul.
You know what though? At some point going throughout this, I was almost convinced that Hellbrand was going to be the Witch King, and that was his vibe. Like I really, really thought that was the case. So here's a question: is it a problem that the main thing that we are doing at the finale of this episode is talking about the fact that we were trying to guess who different characters were, and that's the main takeaway? Is that a problem or is that okay?
It's interesting because I think it's almost like there's 3 different sects of people watching this and mixes of them. So there's the Tolkien fans, of varying like grades, from the scholars down to the Padawans like me, and then there are the Jackson fans who've seen the Jackson films but not read the books, and then there's your casual TV viewer, and all three would have had a different viewing experience. And I think the levels of trying to guess the character would have been different for each one. So it's fascinating that like we're saying, learning more about Tolkien. So the two questions I had were like, where's the other 14 rings or 16 rings or however many there are? Because they forged the three. Where are the other ones? And
how many rings are there? Sorry,
just 9. It's 9 for the race of men,
7 for the dwarves,
lords, 3 for the elves, and then the one ring.
And then one.
So we got 3 already. So it's like we're going to be on season 20 or something before the.
Well, the other
I don't think that. I mean, I don't think they can do batches of 3. Like, I'm sure they can make like more, but then who knows?
That is one thing I'm worried. That's something. Sorry, Brad. That's across you. That's one thing I'm worried about. Are we just going to be ticking box? Okay, the men got their rings now. Dwarves got their rings.
Well,
is that what we're going to be doing?
It should have taken 300 years to make those rings, and they even talk about that. There's a line where they say that him and Celebrimbor and Sauron are wandering through the elf. Wherever, I can't remember where they are, through the underneath the forge, and they're going, oh my goodness, we've only got 3 weeks to do work that would take 3 centuries. And it's like, oh, they're even pointing, I don't know if they're pointing fun at it, but they're pointing at it, that they're messing around with it. And the Sauron reveal, again, because I've been reading about it, was probably earlier for me than it would have been if I had not read about it, because he says it's a gift. And he's in the books, he's disguised as the Lord of Gifts when he influences him to make that. And it's like, I was like, oh yeah. And my wife was like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, it's definitely him now. Like, no doubt about it. That is a full-on reveal. So it's been really interesting. There's all these different ways of watching it. And I wonder if the writers wrote into that.
I think that what they have here is a completely impossible task. And there have to be occasions where they are going to. You cannot adapt something that takes 1,000 years. You can't, because you can't spend 1,000 years telling a story, because you are every 5 minutes going to have to jump years where you're recasting people constantly. You've got 3 people, you've got 3 elves in it that are going to stay the same. And you end up doing a House of Dragon recast thing every 5 minutes. And it's like, and it feels a bit weird, and it feels a bit disconnected.
Westworld could do it though. Westworld, that is the thing that Westworld does better than anyone else, is the way it plays with time. And the way it makes you realize that these elves, they can live forever. They do live forever, don't they? I mean, there is no expiration date on an elf's life, is there? No.
Well, no. They are functionally immortal, yeah. And then, but apart from the contrivance of the light is going.
The tree is shedding its leaves.
They can change their appearance, but they're not going to die of old age. Okay, so I fully I do believe there's a way in which you can make this TV series where they could have been doing this for 300 years. While we're seeing Nori and the Stranger do their thing, while we're seeing this, and we're realizing, holy crap, this has been happening 200 years separate from this time. This has been happening, and it all folds together in this beautiful way. I think they could have done that, and it would have been a really legitimate use of the television.
So The Witcher did it very well, didn't they?
They did it in The Witcher.
Yeah. I didn't want to say that because I was worried I might spoil it for people, but
no, but they did.
You guys did it,
and it worked. It worked really, really well. So actually, I'll eat my words happily on that one. Maybe there is a way.
But I think.
No, I don't know. I don't know if they could do it with the way they've done it now, but I think in another universe, it's possible.
So I think with Westworld, though, I mean, they've taken the nugget of an idea of the Yul Brynner film and made something out of it. So they're writing it. It's a fresh idea. That didn't exist in the original text. That was a new thing. Whereas here, they're trying to wrestle these thousands and thousands of years into a TV show. And I think you're probably right in that they had rules in that writer's room. Yes, they would have replied back to the text, as you said, Marcus, that everything was led by the text, but they would have definitely, almost for certain, had a rule that is a rule for all writing for TV and film, that each thing that happens has to progress the story. Whereas in prose, you can have pages and pages of just backstory and information and things about people's feelings and their innermost workings. But when it comes to TV or film, you have to progress it. So I think that they will have been led by the format. But I don't think they've like completely deserted Tolkien fans, because there's stuff in there only Tolkien fans would get, like the Lord of Gifts thing. Like there is stuff in there. So there's stuff in there only for Tolkien fans, or only people who've read the books, or at least familiar with the text. So I don't think they've deserted them entirely. But yeah,
but I like that they've done that. I like that they've gone down that road as well. Like I'm all in favor of like respect the Tolkien fans as well, because for me it does feel like the thing I love about watching Lord of the Rings, the films, is I always feel like I'm discovering something that wasn't for me, but like that I've eavesdropped on a conversation that's like 1,000 years old or something, and I'm like picking up some kernel of knowledge about the world, and I feel like I'm getting that in this TV series as well. So I love that. I love that stuff is there, and that line now means something to me that it didn't mean before. So yeah, but yeah, I wonder, is that what their goal is in the writers' room? Yeah, so
it's an interesting thing, I think, because it is. We've said before that when we covered the Jackson trilogy on the rewatch that we did a few months back, we said that these were impossible films. They shouldn't have been able to be made. The fact that this happened is a miracle, and I think what they're trying to do here is to pull off something that is no less, if not more, miraculous and more difficult, because the Lord of the Rings is a story. It is a functional beginning, middle, end, 3-act hero's journey, blah 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 blah. It's all there as a fantastic treatment. What they're doing here is they're taking notes from the author, and they, in the Silmarillion, and they're working backwards from what happened to create something that is both brand new and familiar. And it is, I think they've done the best they possibly could.
I know, I agree on everything you just said. My excitement could not be higher for the next season right now, just because of everything I've gotten, and I love that I haven't authenticity or accuracy to a source or anything I just haven't allowed it get in the way.
Final thoughts then on the road ahead. What do we want to see from series 2 of this, should it arrive?
Should it arrive, or is it
I
not?
think they're signing 3 of them.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Have they? I haven't looked into it. I don't know. Okay, don't panic, John.
If we're
it's
still
okay.
I'm looking forward to the.
What do you want?
Is it? Go for it, John.
Whatever you want.
I would love to see a little bit of. I've always been fascinated by the man in the suit of armor, Sauron.
Yes,
the big giant upside down comb on his head. And it just looks like a giant comb. I love that. I love that design. I think it's so amazing. I would love to see a little bit of that in action, if it's through flashback or something like that. I want to see a little bit more battles.
Yes, please.
I did feel I was always waiting for like that big, you go watch the first Hobbit movie, and there's a lot of flashbacks to battles in that film. Big spectacle moment, like huge spectacle moments that aren't even in the main kind of linear story. And I would have liked a little bit more of that in Lord of the Rings in this season. And so hopefully we'll get a bit more of that, even if it's flashbacks to the past, maybe to better understand Sauron in the past. I don't know.
That would be nice, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of thing. And yeah, keep doing what they're doing,
Yeah. Brad, what's your deal? What do you want?
I'm looking forward to. We're almost certainly going to get the Battle for Mordor, which will be a completely new thing. Like, that's not a thing, but I think they're going to write that. They're going to give us a Battle of Mordor for who gets to control all the orcs and the Mount Doom and all that kind of stuff. I think, I want a good dose of Balrog. I want to see more Balrog, and I want more. I want more dwarves.
Balrog,
I want more dwarves. It's. I've really enjoyed the dwarf thread of this story, and I was sad that we didn't get anything in the last episode.
All right, Caleb.
Yeah, my my bitterness wants to say, is Isildur alive? But but I'll let that go. Yeah, no, I'm here for what they're doing. I'm at least interested, like to just trust where they're going with it, and just because it's fresh enough to I want more Lord of the Rings, like to just go along with the journey. It's new stuff, it's high production value, and I can enjoy that. So, and there are really good highlights to this show. So I hope that they just can kind of keep creating those moments. Yeah,
Get it. I'm after some Gandalf training montages. Is what I want in Rune. Nori and Gandalf doing some training is what I want. No, but I'm looking forward to that character. I'm looking forward to seeing how, having resisted the fact it's Gandalf for the entire series, it's like, okay, fine, I accept it. And I'll be interested to see where they go with that and what they choose to do, both through performance and writing, whether he ends up aligning with something more akin to Ian McKellen's performance, or if they try and take it in a slightly different direction, how he falls in terms of, is it as cut and dry as it appeared to be in this episode, where he kind of just went, oh, well, I'm good now, wise, and off he went? Or is there going to be a little bit more internal conflict, hopefully? Hopefully there'll be a bit of that,
Wise,
I'm wise. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping for a bit of that, and it'll be interesting to see, because Isildur is still in Middle Earth. He's in Mordor currently. So it'll be interesting to see, how they get him back, because at some stage we know his father goes on to become king of Gondor and founding an entire country and land and things like that. I imagine we won't get that until we get to the end, I would assume, of the series. But cool. Any final thoughts on the Rings of Power? Other than the fact that I'm really sad that Lenny Henry's dead. Actually, we haven't mentioned that. I'm gutted that Lenny Henry's dead.
Lenny.
Yeah, I couldn't have cared less about the Harfoots early on, and I was gutted. I was in bits when he's watching the sunset or the sunrise. I was in bits.
I know.
Oh, it's that's just
the last thought I had. They may have answered our question of whether it's a direct prequel to the Jackson verse, because it might be a fake, but Galadriel's husband's died, but he's in the Jackson films. So does that break the chain? That was my last thought, which could be an entire podcast on its own. But
it could be, yeah. Or does she?
She could find him floating in the ocean. We don't know.
Maybe people turn up that way, People turn up out there. Well, on that cheery note, thanks for coming along this ride with us as we've explored I don't know why I keep calling it a ride. That's just something that for some reason is just happening in vernacular at the moment. But thank you for joining us. Yeah, I know. It's been a long road, and we've got there. Thanks, guys. And if you'd like to check out previous conversations, you can catch all of us talking about them on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, things like that. Loads of Lord of the Rings content knocking around on the channel as well. You can go find us there. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We'll be back with a new series in the future. So until then, safe travels. Goodbye.